Care of the elderly in Ireland and the UK is absolutely rife with scammers. One of the many things that grinds my gears about modern Ireland is its absolute disdain, it seems, for the elderly, for older people here. People who've given their entire lives to paying taxes and doing their best and being productive for the Irish state and Irish society, who've lived through the worst of times and are now into their elderly years and often with medical conditions and often living alone. Well, there used to be a time where the Irish state cared for these people, nurtured these people and rewarded them by giving the best possible care that the state could afford. But now it seems we're all too fancy and modern. We haven't time for that anymore. The government can't be bothered, can't be arsed. It doesn't want to have to bother with the nuisance of elderly people and all their accompanying problems and issues. It's far too troublesome. And anyway, as far as our government's concerned, what the hell use are they? They don't contribute much to GDP. They're not productive anymore. Why, they're retired. I mean, they're pretty much dead weight. Driftwood. So they set about closing down all the old school old folks' homes where local people would often care for local older people in local settings, and everybody seemed to know everybody, and it was a very good sense of community, a very good sense of coherence. And I've been in these places and I know what they're like. And look, it's not pleasant for anybody to be elderly or infirm or have medical conditions, but there was a sense of community, a sense of family, a sense of looking after the people who had looked after us when we were young. Well, that's all gone now. The government decided they didn't want anything to do with that anymore. That's far too cumbersome, and they're far too busy doing more exciting things. EU stuff, global stuff, multinational stuff. The elderly can just go off in a corner and die. What they effectively did was outsource that whole profession and industry to privateers. Yes, we don't want to be bothered with that anymore, so we're just going to give a truckload of money to the private sector. Let them have all the hassle. Let them do it. And we'll just let them get on with it, and we won't really pay that much attention to it. So what did all these privateers, these buccaneers of industry, do when they got this portfolio from the government along with loads of taxpayers' cash, quite obviously? Well, let's just call a spade a spade. These are private sector companies. Their whole raison d'etre isn't to care for the elderly, in fact, to care for anybody bar themselves and their shareholders. They're in it to make money, and as much money as possible. The whole care thing is quite simply a byproduct of the making money bit. So the first thing they did was try to hoover in the cheapest possible staff they could get their hands on. These would be the so-called carers. So, not being able to find enough people in Ireland willing to work for half nothing, they trawled the world. So now in Ireland, the caring profession, if you want to call it that, is mainly staffed, it seems, by Africans, sub-Saharan Africans, Indians, Pakistanis, people from pretty much all over the world. That these agencies, these privateers, these buccaneers have gone out and they've hoovered in, with the government's help, of course, providing visa, etc. All these people who are willing to work for half nothing and willing to work night shifts and various other weekend shifts and bank holiday shifts for the lowest possible amount that can be gotten away with. Now, I know from personal experience, because I do know people who work in the sector and have worked in the sector, and they have all told me the same story. These agencies are hoovering in people from parts of the world where, let's just say, the caliber of qualifications isn't anything like it should be. It could be said that the pieces of paper they have with their accreditations aren't worth the ink on the paper itself. They not only can't care in any meaningful way, but they also don't care in any meaningful way. To them, it's easy money, and to the agencies, it's easy profit. This leads to all kinds of issues, as you can imagine, and the vast majority of it is covered up. There's a blind eye turned to a lot of the issues in the system because it suits the government to have nothing to do with it. They don't want to know. Well, here's something that happened just a few days ago in Cabra, in Dublin, where an 89-year-old lady living alone, a dementia sufferer, who was in the charge of various carers, the main of which was her own grandniece, which is excellent. I'm all for that. And she had help from various other parties. One would assume from some of these private companies where the government has outsourced the caring to these people. So they provide the carers on behalf of the government to help relatives who may be caring for the person. So this 89-year-old lady was in her home and she received a caller. Let's watch it together, shall we? And I'm sure at the end of it you'll be just as absolutely frustrated and angry as I was when I first seen it. As you can see, a scene starts off where the lady is answering the door to a gentleman, and he's obviously got a face mask on, which is a bad start. So she, of course, lets him in because he's telling her that he's one of the carers. He's there from the place who provide the carers, and she has no reason to doubt the man. She's 89 years of age, remember. 89 years of age, and suffers from dementia. Now you can see he's obviously explaining something here, that he wants her to look for something or find something or retrieve something, which, as it turns out, is a file, something to do with probably her records or her care records, which she then goes to look for. As you can see, he's now busy scoping out the place. Now, I think it's fair to say this man is not his name isn't Paddy Riley, let's just say that. But that is absolutely indicative of the so-called caring profession now. So this lady, she's obviously being distracted now, as you can see, going through her records, going through her, I assume it's her folder, and here he is rifling through her handbag. Takes out her purse, as she is distracted, and steals all of her cash right there in the house as she is distracted. Of course, he's also looking around for anything else that might be cheap and easy to profit from his point of view, sticking his pocket into his jacket. And now that he's got the cash, he's got what he needed, he's off about his business. No caring, no giving a fuck. This is just pure evil. That, to me, is pure evil. That is absolutely abhorrent. In the woman's own home, an 89-year-old woman suffering from dementia. Now, immediately when I saw this the other day on Twitter, on X, there was comments. Of course, obviously, most comments, people were apoplectic, as I was myself. But there was also comments floating in saying, oh, it looks like a bit of a setup there. How come there was CCTV in the woman's home? All of this excuses. You know, there's always going to be excuses if it's people from, shall we say, new to the parish type people. So, as it turned out, the TLDR for this whole situation was that this lady's main carer, who is her grandniece, was talking to her, and she told her that she had been visited by a male carer and that she had been missing money. It turned out that there had been 2 previous incidents where this lady had reported money had gone missing from her purse. The grandniece was immediately alerted to something suspicious here because she knew that all of the other carers were female. There was no male carer in the picture. So she was immediately alerted and had the foresight and made a very ingenious decision to put in secret CCTV into the house. And that is what you caught there. This was the fake migrant supposed carer who had knowledge of the care industry and was scoping this woman and her house and her habits with one intention and one intention only: to rob her blind. But thankfully, for once, there is a happy ending, in as much as there can be out of a situation like this. The perpetrator was caught. The perpetrator was apprehended. Now, if like me, you were thinking that doesn't look like a Paddy McGonigal to me, you'd be absolutely correct. His actual name is Ranillo Canalang. Let's just say, not as Irish as Paddy McGinty's goat. Seemingly he's been in Ireland for the past 23 years. When this video was circulated on social media, some members of the public came forward to say that he had both been a carer for their elderly parent, and others said that they had worked with the man. This is the type of person these agencies are employing to care for your elderly relatives, your father, mother, your grandparents. And nobody wants to talk about it. But how did the mainstream media frame this inconvenient incident? Well, like this. According to the Sunday World, Dublin dad caught red-handed stealing cash from dementia sufferer, 89, court hears. Dublin dad. No matter how much you hate the mainstream media, I can tell you this, you don't hate them half enough. That is absolutely despicable. That headline isn't random, people. It's not random. You know it and I know it. That's not random. Somebody thought that up. That was put before other people. That was brought before a committee or whatever, editorial staff. They thought about this, they tossed it around, and somebody made the decision. That's exactly how we need to frame this. Dublin dad. Now, when you think Dublin dad, the vast majority of people who will read this headline, read this paper, and I've seen it in other papers, will just see the headline. They will not have seen the video. They will not have seen this picture. So what do you think is going to pop into their mind when they read the headline, Dublin dad? You don't hate the mainstream media half enough. They're not here to inform you. They're here to misinform you. They lie by omission and they lie to your face. They have a million tricks and a million ways to misinform you and misdirect you. Dublin dad. Well, I'm hearing far too many horrific stories about what is going on with the care of our elderly today. So if any of you know people or you work in the care profession, leave me a comment, because I'm looking into this with a very, very careful, scrupulous eye. And I will be doing more videos uncovering the sheer scam artistry, the sheer skullduggery, and the sheer carelessness of these unscrupulous private buccaneers who just want to make a quick and easy buck off the elderly, off the most vulnerable people in our society. They're hiring far too many people who couldn't care less about your elderly relative, in charge of your elderly relative. And even when something as heinous and evil like this happens, what's the mainstream media's approach? Label it as a Dublin dad problem. If only it wasn't for all those Dublin dads. So let me hear any stories you have of either having worked in the industry or knowing people who do work in the industry, because I think it's rotten to the core and it needs to be exposed. Our elderly have built this country and built the UK. They deserve the best care and attention that we can give them. And as far as I'm concerned, they're not getting it.